So, I'm watching all of these, crying shit libs for the basically wetback filth that have invaded Hitler Freedom Land, and just watched a video of, some middle class black man explaining, well, the latest insanity, some. Uh, I guess Anglo Afro Caribbean bro. They made him head of Atlanta MARTA, the Metro Transit Authority. Well, dude's work permit expired. He didn't even have a green card to be in the country, and they fucking made him the CEO of the Metro Transit Authority. I mean, that is a slap in the face to every, what some call ADOS, American descendants of slaves, like actual black American. And, frankly, it's a slap in the face to me. I mean, in terms of thinking about all of that, insanity, um, uh, I mean, I had forebears. They came. I guess they came. We don't know. It was so far back, and the records were so shit. And they were just whatever, probably plebeians. I guess. But they came from Ireland and Scotland. Some of them. So like biologically, let's say I'm like, whatever it is. Maybe 10%, 13% Irish, 13% Scottish. They got married and blah 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 blah. And they came in, I guess, into Quebec somewhere, and then they migrated out to northern Michigan, and they ended up basically being part of the founding wave of the state of Michigan, and not only the state of Michigan, but northern Michigan, like the farthest north, right on the Canadian border. And a number of my relatives over the years, starting with my great grandfather, I guess it was. Yeah, his second wife was Ojibwe, otherwise known as Chippewa. I had another cousin. He was inducted into the Chippewa or Ojibwe tribe, the Fond du Lac Band, around Duluth, Minnesota, because he was like the bishop of the Duluth diocese, I guess they call it, or diocese. I don't know what they call it. I'm, Nibog. I'm not religious. I'm a red. Um, and what was I gonna say? So, we have deep ties to that region of America, and we are American in the sense that we're not just part of the USA. Historically, we're part of Canada and those borderlands, much like Moranos or Chicanos, or part of the Americas, Mexico and the U.S. Historically, but have been American citizens, I guess, since like 1840. Yeah, but what I can't stand, and I was raised as a super liberal, and that was fucked up actually. That was like miseducation. That and you know it gets real complicated historically, socially, but um, basically, in hindsight, after decades of experience, um, I lived in Chicago for 24 years. I ended up working as a federal anti corruption hire, a truck driver. And, I was a communist militant, a worker militant, a cadre in the Green Party. And, this fucking Irish filth who ran the city into the ground on behalf of the whatever it was, 23, 25 billionaires that rule Chicago. They used Mexican wetback and Ukrainian filth as scabs, among other nationalities, and even scum from Indiana. And then, the filth that supported that filth were the cornfield strivers who came in from, shit like Indiana. Or Iowa, or whatever, from 5,000 or even 10,000 miles away, and thinking about that, especially towards the end of my career with the city of Chicago, it was absolutely infuriating. And, I had a mortal hatred and rivalry with these interloper fucking scum, basically, and I got, and looking into it further, I didn't realize for years, but because they're such good liars and manipulators, but a lot of the people who call themselves communist are actually Maoist filth. And what it's one thing. Okay, you're a Maoist. Okay, go to China, live in China. I mean, it's ridiculous. Go live in fucking China, or go live in some peasant country. That if you hate America, and there are a lot of fuck up things about America. I'll be the first to point out. But you're just a hateful, reactionary, anti-American piece of shit. And really, you're anti-Marxist. You were just some fucking shit lib, boomer more often than not, who adopted some bullshit third worldist ideology of hate towards the working class of the West. And again, there's a lot of problems with the working class of the West, but the working class of the West isn't the main problem. The main problem are your fucking, petty bourgeois yuppie fucking friends who, hate their own country, who hate their own working class. I tried to be diplomatic with you and bring up the subject of, hey, look, shouldn't we try to relate to Joe Sixpack? Ordinary Americans. We're white. Let's try to organize the white people. And then, be in an alliance with the, whatever you want to call it, revolutionary black and Latin people. That's fine. I've even joined the Puerto Rican Students Union. I wasn't even Puerto Rican, but I grew up around them. I was in the Puerto Rican Students Union in college, and I thought they'd be a bridge between, whites and the blacks, but, I guess, no, that didn't really happen, for a variety of complicated historical reasons, I suppose. On the other end, these Maoist fucks, and more broadly, these liberal fucks, they're just, what's the word I'm looking for? Insincere, but, just dishonest. They're dishonest, liars and manipulators, and, they basically, sorry, I'm old and whatever, but, it's just like the topic is so fucking crazy. They're, sorry, I lost my train of thought now. So basically, they were not only, just some weird little ideology, scum like this, yeah, they basically supported, people like Barack Obama. Or Bill Ayers. I never talked to the schmuck. I saw him at some events, but I never went up and talked to him because, he was just a rich schmuck who, was, as they said, liberals with bombs. And he got off because of his family connections and clout in Illinois and the U.S. And then he went on to support that fucking demon, Barack Obama. And... I had sympathy for Barack Obama as, the first black president. I thought, the whole thing was shit. It was a fraud from the get-go. I was never impressed with, and it was very transparent to see what they were doing, like using the black population in America to, pimping his identity to get him in there as a CIA cutout. And that's, Tulsi Gabbard just revealed what the fuck he did with Comey and all the other shit libs. And, that's their MO, is basically, race pimp and manipulate, lie, cheat, steal, murder. And, they tried to do that with Prez Don. And, he's basically, I say Prez Don is our least shitty president ever. He's no Lenin. Neither is Putin. Putin is the president or whatever his title is of a Rongol Republic, the counter-revolutionary general who murdered many of the best of Russia. The Russia is just, I've lived in Russia and Belarus, and Belarus is a lot better than Russia, but Russia is basically mostly just a bunch of peasant office workers ruling that place, and it's nothing like it was even 50 years ago. So, for me, yeah, I mean, I'm like, and on that note, in terms of the Russia connection and me, I mean, half my family is basically, I guess you could say in a way it gets, again, it's very complicated, but the other half of my family you could say is Soviet Russian, and so I applied for dual citizenship, to Russia, back in September, and I was refused, on spurious grounds. It's completely clear that, half of my family is, you can find no one more Belaruski, which was part of the Russian Empire, which qualified me through my grandparents to be a dual Russian citizen. But they're stupid. They're just stupid, selfish, and frankly though, on the other side, the family, my immediate family, is really fucking stupid. CIA fucking liberals, and 2 out of 3 are dead, and the third one's going to be dead soon. Good riddance. It's been, God, 30 years of a nightmare with them. So, I'm just glad they're dead or almost dead. So, but yeah, I'm not a Russian peasant. I'm more American. But like Lenin said, I'm from the little tradition. Not the great tradition of America. The great tradition of America is like George Washington and land speculation and theft. The little tradition is Daniel Shea and his men taking up arms and threatening the local sheriff who went to steal Daniel Shea's land with death, and forcing through the Bill of Rights in exchange for a centralized government and a constitution. So my people's tradition on the American side is basically the Bill of Rights and armed resistance, and what I really appreciate the Soviet Russian tradition. That was half my family's tradition, but or where they came from really, but they were all murdered, and the country I was going to move to in 1991 was murdered in the prime of my life and no longer exists. So, I'll probably, I don't know. I mean, America is just so fucked up in terms of, like for me, I'm a retiree now. I just retired after 30 plus years of horror, just cockroach fucking Nazi bosses and scab filth and Nazi sympathizers and just criminal filth. Oh, I hated it, and they hated me. So, but I think I'm gonna go back to America at least for 3 months, and maybe around Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. They had that nice black lady representative who voted against more arms for Israel. She was like one of 6 with Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I respect in general the more MAGA types because they actually have principles. I was invited to speak at a Tea Party, one of the first Tea Party events in Chicago, and I declined because I'm not on the right, but the more I see the way they conduct themselves, you got to respect that, especially with people like Tulsi Gabbard. Hi Tulsi, I know we spoke briefly on Telegram. You gave me your number, but you got scared because I was like, well, I'm in Tula, Russia at the time, and yeah, half my family's CIA, the other half's KGB, but I'm just a normal everyday Taliban communist. And then you kind of freaked out and ghosted me. Sorry, love you, surfer babe. You're doing good work now. Keep on keeping on. But what a world we live in. But otherwise, yeah, I'm thinking Michigan is full of like shit lib pussies. In my experience, I was in Ann Arbor though, so that's a really shitty place. Social, like ideologically, horrible liberals, and the speculation with these cockroaches in their restaurants, it's just insane. So yeah, and I had family I tried to reconnect with, but they're right wing and they don't understand much and they're scared. So when some little cunt from Maryland comes and he starts screaming that I'm crazy and violent because I point out, well, normal people, they don't put up with $1,200 a month rent for like a dorm room, or no health care, or unending property taxes and getting thrown off the land your people have lived on for 100 or 200 or more years. That's the great American tradition of speculation and theft and murder and cheating and lying, and I won't put up with it anymore. I think I will go back to America for a little bit at least, and basically probably pick an event where ICE is deporting these wetbacks, and cheer them on. And if any of you fucking shit libs want to take a swing at me, make my day. I'll put you in the hospital. I don't give any more fucks. So, yeah. What else? I don't know. But fuck the these health insurance parasites. Fuck these Nazi whores that I had to work under. These fucking Uncle Toms and Aunt Toms and Tio Tomases and Tia Tomases. Eh, all I can say is you better thank the police for keeping you alive, because shit's getting realer and realer every fucking year, and pretty soon you're not going to have those bootlicking pigs there to fucking keep you alive. So